So I'm here at Fox Williams talking about employment issues for scale-ups, and we have Marian Bloodworth. Marian, hi.
Hello.
Thank you for doing this. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, please.
I am an employment law partner here in the team at Fox Williams, and my practice focuses specifically on clients in the financial services, technology, fintech and payment sector.
Well, that's perfect, because today we're talking about fast-growing companies, specifically fintech. So I want you to imagine that I'm a GC in a fast-growing company, perhaps newish in post. What are the three things you think that person should really be thinking about on the employment side?
Okay, I would say, first off, know who you've got in your business and what terms they are operating on, I mean contractual terms. Secondly, I'd be really conscious about culture, the working environment. That can create legal risks, and happy to come back to that. And the other one that's still a big watchword is flexibility. What does it really mean, and does it work for you in your business?
Okay, so let's start with the first one. So know who's in the business. Do they not know already? What does this matter?
Yeah. I really hope they do know who the people are. What they might not know so much is the legal terms that those people are operating on in the business. And that's because a lot of businesses grow really fast. At the outset, it's probably a founder and really close contacts who are rolling their sleeves up, mucking in, probably as contractors or consultants. As the business scales and grows, obviously a lot of those people typically convert to employees. But you can still get to the stage where it's time for someone to move on, and you need to find out what their contract says, because that impacts how much notice you have to give them, what they might be entitled to by way of payments. But there's other really important things, especially as counsel, that you want to look at, and that's things like your IP. Do they own their IP? Is it your IP? What about your confidential information? What about your data? Did you restrict their ability to go and work for somebody after they leave you? And if so, for how long? Are you worried about that? So there's a lot around those employment contractual terms that need to be looked at, and that's obviously where GCs come in, counsel come in.
And I guess if you're the first in-house lawyer in one of these businesses, you might be the first person really bringing a bit of seriousness and structure to how all of this happens.
I think that's right, and if you've got an HR team or a people team, you would be asking them to let you have sight of those kind of contracts. If you've got the luxury of time, you'll do it up front. More often than not, you're doing it as and when a situation arises, and you need to understand, as I say, what is the legal basis for that person in your business. What can you and can't you do with a degree of ease? And I'm sure all GCs and counsel know this, but employees have a lot of legal rights. Workers have some. Consultants and contractors will have the legal rights on the whole that are set out in their service agreement, their contracts, whatever they've got with you. But there are other things that they can benefit from, protection from discrimination. There's just things that you need to be really careful about.
Okay, so we talked a bit about who's in the business and on what terms. What about culture? I know you said that culture is a legal risk, and what do you mean by that?
It is, and for as long as your business is full of people and not bots and AI and robots, you've got people working together, rubbing along together. But as we know, if your workplace isn't healthy, if people can't work together, if they can't collaborate, if tensions arise, that obviously can affect things like productivity and how you go to market and the service delivery. But also, fundamentally, from an employment law perspective, it can create legal risk. You could be looking at things like complaints and grievances. You could be looking at things like discrimination claims if people feel, for example, they've been treated differently and inconsistently to somebody else in their team. If people are working so hard that they burn out or they get stressed because they're being bullied or harassed, then obviously you worry about that from a health perspective. Also from a stress claim perspective, it could impact your insurance. There's all sorts of things where legal risk can be created, I guess.
So I see that's something for the in-house lawyer maybe to be aware of, but how can they contribute to this environment, to culture?
Yeah, I think culture is really important. There'll be a reason that your business exists and that you've been able to attract so many people to it and that they want to be part of it. So what is it? What are your values? And how can legal counsel actually demonstrate those values? There'll be a senior person in the business. What's it like when they come into the shared working space or the meeting where you're all going to get together? They can set the tone. Particularly in the financial services sector, we always say tone is set from the top. There are other very practical things, though, from a legal risk perspective that you can do as GC, and that's making sure you've got things like policies and processes in place. I know lots of fast growth companies don't want to be burdened by policies and processes, and often people join them because they've left that behind at the really big players. But you do need some around disciplinaries and grievances, equal opportunities policies. For example, there's a proactive duty now on employers to ensure that employees don't suffer from sexual harassment in the workplace. There's things that you need to have in place to show employees you're serious about creating a good culture.
Okay, so we talked a bit about who's in the business, on what terms, talked about culture. you want to talk about flexibility, and we're all sort of a bit more flexible now since the pandemic.
We are, and actually for fast growth companies, that remains a really key driver and imperative half the time, because when you're growing really fast, it's almost impossible for your real estate to keep up with it. So you will probably need some people to work from home, or at least work flexibly, work remotely. That's great. You brought up the pandemic. Shades of the pandemic still apply if you're thinking about things like legal rights, if people want to work from abroad, say at their family house or while they're on holiday. That all sounds great and very helpful until you have to remember that they could accrue legal rights genuinely from working both in the UK and abroad. There's other considerations. Their social security position might change, tax situation might change. You know, there are things to be aware of, and of course your business needs might change. After a while, you might actually have a big enough space that you want everyone to come in. So you need their contract to allow you to call them in, and for people not to put up a fight and say, I don't want to come. And
it sounds like if you're the in-house lawyer and you hear talk about, you know, such and such, or this team is now going to be based in some place where you know you don't have an office, maybe it's time to start to look carefully at that.
Absolutely. And look, I'm not a tax lawyer, but at that's the point at which you need to start thinking even more broadly about your tax implications. If you have a lot of people operating effectively on behalf of the business in another country in which you are not registered, the real risk is that you're creating a permanent establishment for tax purposes. And that's a route you don't want to go down, unless that, of course, is part of your expansion plan. But for lots of people, it isn't. And you can expose yourself to inadvertent tax risk.
Marian, thank you. We covered so much in such a short length of time. You evidently love this area. Why do you love it so much?
I do love this area, Ben. I actually really love my job, but there is something so satisfying about supporting businesses that are in this fast growth stage, seeing them succeed, being part of the solutions, and just seeing them grow and develop. It's fabulous.
Well, thank you. Really enjoyed speaking with you today.
Thank you very much.